Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 22. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Wopost. And this turned out to be a pretty long episode, and as I went back to edit it, there's not a very good spot to break it up into two. So I'm going to skip most of my long intro and get right into it for you, try to save you some time. The Drentsche Patrijshond is a nearly 400-year-old breed of pointing dog originating from Spain but refined in the Netherlands to be a multi-purpose farm dog used for hunting feather and fur, keeping the farm clear of rodents, and pulling small farm carts. Males stand 23 to 25 inches, females 21.5 to 23.5 inches, and they weigh between 55 and 73 pounds. They have a dense, straight, white coat with brown plates and a water-resistant undercoat. Today, Brian O'Connor from Two Gun Kennels shares his experience with the Drentsche. Brian, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me. It's real exciting to always get an opportunity to talk about Drentsche.
Awesome. And so you've abbreviated it, but I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily. Can you, for me, because I can't, pronounce the name of the breed, please?
Sure. Well, I'll do as well as an American mouth can because Dutch is very tricky. And I try to keep this tangent short, but they actually used a lot of local dialect during World War II as passwords because only the locals could use it. Where I was stationed in the Netherlands in South Limburg, there is a town called Gulpen, which is right down there by Maastricht. And within 5 kilometers, there's 5 different villages, and they all have a different word for the number 5. So they would use those kinds of things as passwords. So pronouncing Dutch words correctly for us is incredibly difficult. So it roughly goes Drentsche Patrijshond, which is a simple compound word that says the partridge dog of Drenthe. Drenthe is a province of the Netherlands that is in the eastern side of the country that abuts Germany and has nice gentle rolling hills. And that's where Vincent van Gogh is from.
Oh, I
And
didn't
if
know
you
that.
were to look, yeah, if you were to look at his earlier works, where before he did all the impressionistic, Starry Nights and all that kind of stuff, his realistic paintings are amazing, but they're all these dark, brooding skies and these gentle rolling hills, and that's Drenthe. And so, and then they're also famous for the Hunenbedden, which is a megalithic. Maybe I'm not using the word. It's like Stonehenge, but nowhere near as cool. They're like these piles of rocks that the ancient people used to have, and they're also there in Drenthe.
Okay. Well, and since we've already talked a lot about the Netherlands a little bit, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, well, I'm Brian O'Connor, and I've been actively involved in the Drentsche Patrijshond since 2006 when I got my first one. Uh, Although it is interesting, I listened to the podcast for the French Spaniel,
Mm-hmm.
and very similarly, I had the Simon and Schuster's book as well. And I was 8 or 9 or whatever years old, and I was looking through it for the perfect dog for me. And where he came up with the French Spaniel, I came up with the Drent. And of course, there's no way that I could pronounce it, but I thought just a little description in there. I'm like, that's exactly what I want. And then, is it there was no internet back then because I'm 50, soon to be 55. Uh, and there was like the American Kennel Club Gazette, and I don't remember if Gundog was around or not, but there was very little out there. And one of the passages was rarely seen outside of its homeland. So finally, young Brian just puts a little scrap of paper in the book and put it away. Fast forward, I'm in the Air Force and I'm serving a NATO assignment in South Limburg. And I was in a Dutch cycling club, where they say Kopen, and fantastic club. And we're always riding around, and I keep seeing these white and brown dogs. And I'm like, oh man, I got to figure out what that is. But when you're in a cycling club and you're hauling ass across the countryside, you don't just like pop off and strike up a conversation with somebody. So it took longer than it should have, but I figured out this is the dog that I as a kid thought was perfect for me. And then so we called some breeders and went to their homes and visited with them and met the dogs and met the people and was like, yes, absolutely. This wasn't just a fantasy or a pipe dream. This dog is exactly what I want. And so kind of the rest is history from there.
So was 8-year-old Brian specifically looking for a bird dog, or was it just a good looking dog with the right temperament and, had great pictures in the book?
Right. Well, so here's the thing. So no one in my family hunted. So I'm kind of a late onset hunter. But when I was a kid, I subscribed to Outdoor Life and Field and Stream, and I'm reading all the articles, and I always fantasized or wanted to go out there and hunt birds and do this stuff, but had no idea where to go. And so I always really liked the hunting pointing breeds, and so I was always kind of focused in that realm on on dogs. I wasn't really looking back. My criteria wasn't really that super, but but what I really do like about the Drent is they are an incredibly versatile dog, and I think that makes uh, having a Drent very relevant. And even though most people have never heard of the breed, and usually when people like, I've never heard of the breed, like that's shocking. There's only 3,200 of them in the world, and about between 150 and 120 here in North America. So if you had heard of them, I would be a little bit more surprised, or unless you were a kid with the Simon and Schuster's book and was geeking out over dogs and bookmarked it and sat on it for 20 plus years.
So when you're in the Netherlands, you're stationed there, and you see your childhood dream dog, were you hunting at that time?
Yeah, so I'd been stationed in Alaska for about 8 years, and I had a completely wild as hell, unruly Brittany, and her main skill was running away. And however, if you if you you could go bird hunting for grouse with her I had one of those crappy old retractable lines. This is completely ridiculous, right? Going hunting in the woods with your dog on a freaking robo leash. But if you did that and keep her from doing what she wanted to do, then all of a sudden, bam, she found birds like no problem. Unfortunately, I was too ignorant to know what to do and how to do it and all this stuff. And then usually all of my Alaska buddies were like, why are you bringing a dog and put that shotgun down? Get your 22. We just pop them in the head when they're sitting in the bush. You're like, cringe, cringe.
Yeah.
Um, but so I refrained from doing that part. But that was kind of my introduction to bird dogs. And then my neighbor that was about a mile down the road, because I lived way out in the sticks, uh, he had an electric fence, an e-fence, the in-ground kind,
Hmm.
and his dog didn't get a lot of attention, so he would run away and come to my house. So I ended up, my first two field dogs were a very unruly Brittany and a runaway field line golden retriever. And so I guess technically my first gun dog was a Nova Scotia duck culling retriever that I got in like 1993. But again, I was so clueless at the time. I couldn't have fought my way out of a wet paper sack with, you read books and you have the audacity to think that you have all this knowledge and you're going to go do all this stuff. And then reality sets in and you're kind of like, I am without a clue. I need a mentor. uh,
It's a pretty common theme on this podcast is that,
yeah.
a mentor, whether that's for training or for breeding. Yeah, I think sometimes those are two different mentors maybe some people can
Yes.
have, enough, you find a mentor with enough experience to be able to do both. But as a new hunter, and particularly, I'm going to use the term that my friend Rose absolutely hates, which is adult onset hunter, and she'll probably
Yes.
chastise me for saying it. But those of us who start hunting later in life certainly require that mentor to help with the learning curve, because we have a tendency to just
Right.
jump in with both feet, right? We don't
Right.
take baby steps into it. It's I'm getting a dog and I'm getting a shotgun that costs thousands of dollars, and
Right.
all sorts of, probably get some fancy clothes depending on your style. It might be new modern technical stuff, or it might be some more traditional fashionable things, or
Right.
whatever. But definitely jumping right in and then realizing quickly that we're over our head and wearing cement
Right.
boots.
Right. So Paxson was my first Drent, and I got him as a baby in 2006 when I lived in the Netherlands, and I got to attend some of the Dutch clubs training days, field work training days, and that was super mega awesome cool for me. I was majorly geeking out because I'm like, I'm seeing some of the stuff from the books, but now you're actually seeing it work. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, my impression of that was completely wrong. And but so you start to really learn and start to have a lot of fun. So I call Paxson like my first true bird dog. And even though he was an amazing dog, and unfortunately he suffered having me as his boss and trainer, and so the learning curve with him and his half brother were pretty immense, getting schooled up in everything to do bird dog. But now that's pretty much all I do is, we train 80 to 100 days a year in the summer, and then we spend 80 to 100 days a year out chasing wild birds. So,
Yeah,
um,
right on.
yeah.
So you got your first Drent while you're stationed in Europe, and then you come back to the States, ultimately retire. What made you decide to stick with the Drents? I mean, there aren't very many Drentsche, Patrijshond. I've screwed it all up. I'm not going to try it
Just say
anymore.
Drent.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
Right. Aren't too many breeders in North America.
Right. Well, at the time, so I just fell in love with him. It's kind of interesting listening to, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, the French Spaniel. Uh, there are, because the Drent, the French Spaniel, and the small Munsterlander they actually share a common set of roots.
Right.
So there are some similarities in there, and the Drent shares, I think, perhaps slightly more similarities in temperament, behavior, and hunting style to the French Spaniel than perhaps the small Munsterlander, and we can get into that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
But Drents are kind of like potato chips, or nacho cheese Dorito. It's really hard to just have one. They're just super intelligent. They're a little bit funny. They're very derpy. They kind of grow on you, and they really love working for their boss. So there's just a whole lot in their base mindset that just makes them very agreeable to have around. Um, and so it just becomes very easy to want more. So yes, after I left the Netherlands, I was still active duty, and I imported another Drent when I was living in New Mexico, and then I got stationed in Spain, and I imported another Drent from the Netherlands to the Spain and brought her back. And then so it just kind of grew from there. So at the time, there was only a couple of people breeding. They didn't really have um, really well-defined programs. They were just kind of trying to get by. And that's when I came up with the idea, in order to make this happen, we have to produce a breed club. And that breed club, I would say it was successful in the early days, but in the end, uh, it's not a functional group. So the current group of active breeders has founded a new breed club for the Drent, the American Drentsche Patrijshond Association, the ADPA, and we're really excited. So long story short, my I met my wife through the Drent. We inadvertently imported two litter mates, and she imported a boy, I imported a girl, but they were litter mates, and we just struck up a friendship that we maintained for many years. And as life goes, her marriage did what it did, my marriage did what it did, and then she had always said that she would want to come back to live in Washington. So I said, well, now is a great time for you. I need to split rent. You want to split rent with me? And then we both laughed and we're like, well, this is either going to be amazing or it's going to be terrible. And so we split rent. And then within a short time, we decided that maybe we needed to be more than just friends. So I got more than just the Drent out of the Drent. I got my beautiful wife. So, but she also had her own male and a couple of females that she had imported. So she had her kennel, I had my kennel, and when we kind of joined forces, we'd already been collaborating for years and helping other people uh, breed their Drents. And obviously, my two boys were offered out for stud as Jenna's boy was, and so it just worked out that we kind of became the most productive breeder of Drents in North America in the history of the breed. I mean, and you think, wow, that sounds like a lot. Next to the French Spaniel guy, we look like, we're just baby breeders. I mean, we just had it. We have our 11th litter on the ground right now. Um, so, but relative to everybody else, they've had one, two, maybe three litters, and then they're kind of done. So we just love them, and so we're just gonna keep on having them.
I feel like there should be a television show about this, and similar in style to the Brady Bunch, where you have, these this father of a couple Drents over here and a mother of a few Drents over here, and you all combine and you build this big
Right,
Drent family, right? Maybe that's an
right,
Animal Planet show that could be on primetime TV at
right,
some point.
right, right. It would be an interesting. It would be an interesting. What are those reality TV shows or whatever?
Yeah, sure.
It would just like these people are nuts. That's all people would come to the conclusion for. But uh, yeah, so we had a time where we were breeding more than we had really planned or intended to, because unfortunately we had three females that were all very close in age. So you kind of make a decision. Are you just going to put all your eggs in this basket and breed this one and just kind of let the others, or you're kind of like, well, that's kind of stupid. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We spent money and time and energy bringing these dogs in for the specific reason to expand the gene pool. So, but just because you have 18 months between dog A and dog C, so it was an interesting couple of years, and we're past that now. So we'll get back to breeding once a year, every other year, that kind of thing. But we don't have intent to stop. Just slow our roll a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Our philosophy is, we're looking for correct type, correct temperament, correct personality, good health, and then we've bred enough dogs and our dogs were far enough apart that we can fold one back in occasionally. Um, but we're the only two people that have successfully bred a Drent using imported frozen semen.
Okay.
We've had two litters, but we're the only people. It's been tried by others, and no one's been successful, whether it's here in America or in the Netherlands. Devil's in the details. So that's all I can say about that. But so we'll travel abroad to breed. We will bring in frozen semen. We're about ready to start another frozen semen import uh, project to get interesting dogs, and we have access to the Dutch database, so we can and they list health and all kinds of data in the
Hmm.
database, so you can go through and you're like, I really like that one, and you kind of go through and you're kind of like, not so much, and then you can go back through and Jenna is a data processing machine. She has a near photographic memory, so and all these pedigrees online have the picture of the dog, so she just memorizes all of this stuff. So what takes her a day or two would take me, I don't know, 4 months. And then even, so she's just able to, so she makes that part very much easier. Um, our ability to research and consume that much data. So we literally just do a full scale, you know, bolo on finding these right studs, and then you try to talk to the owners and get them to get the boy collected, and we pay for all that stuff, and then bring it in, and we have it all frozen with zooitis. So then we can just kind of tumble through so that we can continue to use new studs. And this strategy is going to be even more important moving forward because of that CDC, uh, that shenanigans, that they need to get that ironed out, because this is going to negatively impact a lot of dog breeds.
That it really is. In particular, obviously, the rare breeds are going to take the biggest hit, the rare sporting breeds, and it's nice to have a few of those around because they promote great conversation.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And but we're fully addicted. I mean, it's interesting, we hunt all over, and we get to hunt with all different kinds of people. I'll do a little bit of guiding in Oregon for a pretty nice outfitter, and then perhaps, and those are all oh my goodness, those are just plantation birds. That's a pet and shoot situation, but it's fun. And I get to meet all kinds of people. And then I think a buddy of mine might pick me up, um, and I'll do some wild bird guiding for him in Oregon this year. But so it's always neat to show them off, because a lot of people are like, well, I know about this and I know about that. There's no way this, because a Drent it's kind of a clunky dog. And maybe that's not the right word to use it, because people are like, well, I was interested in this dog, but he said clunky. What? Uh, but and I kind of alluded to it in the phone call the other day. So we do show dogs. We are firm believers that showing dogs doesn't ruin hunting dogs. That really comes down to the breed club. The breed club manages the standard. The breed club manages judges' education. The breed club manages breeder education. So that's on the breed club. Unfortunately, now the caveat to that, and my mentor Laura Reeves is already shaking her finger at me and giving me the evil scowl. All breed judges, on the other hand, they aren't doing favors to many breeds, because all breed judges meet minimum criteria to judge a wide variety of dogs, in which case they're not experts. They're being paid to be an expert, but functionally they are not an expert in these breeds. They are qualified to judge them, and that is not the same thing. So what ends up winning a lot in the AKC show ring is big, flashy, and showy. So dogs with too much hair, too much this, too much that. But again, I'll point the finger back on the breed club's chest. That's the breed club's responsibility to teach these judges, because you're supposed to come up with information to teach judges how to judge your breed. And if the breed club isn't doing that, then shame on the breed club. That's not the AKC's fault. It's not the AKC's problem. It is the breed club and the lovers of that breed's problem, that they are not banding together to come up with sufficient breeder's education and judges' education. So I'll get off my little soapbox there.
No, I agree with you 100%. I actually learned just maybe last week that so the wire hair pointing Griffon, for example, does not have an illustrated standard with the AKC. And that absolutely blows me away, because we're talking about a not uncommon breed. It's a very well-established breed in North America. So how they don't have an illustrated standard really surprises me. And I know their breed club, who's run by hunters, by sportsmen and sportswomen, that breed club is now working to build that illustrated standard. This is something that we're working with our Small Munsterlander Club of America as well. We own the standard within the AKC for the structure, the conformation, and the temperament of the Small Munsterlander. And that's important And we have a few more steps that we have to take in order to achieve full recognition within the AKC. And we're working through that. But one of those things that we have to do is we have to have 10 small Munsterlander intact dogs that earn their certificates of merit in confirmation. So that's 15 points in confirmation, and that's
Yep.
several shows, right? It's at
Yep.
best, if you have a ton of dogs that show up, it's still 3 shows, and we're not going to
That's
have a
correct.
ton of dogs that show up at every show. I promise you that.
Right. No, I mean we finished CM on my girl Isla, and yeah, it's tough. The AKC Open shows are a great way to cut your teeth on dog showing because they're a little less fanfare than the normal breeds, but it can also be quite difficult because the judges, the quality of judging on the FSS breeds is interesting on occasion. Half of the time a judge could not draw a line from the name of the breed to a photo of the breed,
Mm,
and that is absolutely that has to be fixed. That is one thing the AKC has to fix. If they're going to assign somebody to do that, that individual must have at least read the breed standard and must be able to see the name of a breed and then be able to draw a line to a photo on the other side. This is what I'm judging, and I can at least properly identify them. um, but one of the things that's kind of interesting about the Drent, and in that we have you have a breed that's closely related to the Drent, and just recently you had the French Spaniel guy, and they're closely related again. So, but conformationally, there's actually some rather significant differences. Um, and and when I was showing in Europe, I would always be right ahead of the French Spaniel Epinal. A B C D E E F would be Epinal Francois.
sure.
So yeah, so the French Spaniel, even if it was a big male behind us, it looked very effeminate relative to a Drent. Same white and brown kind of coat. The head structure completely different. The Drent's head is kind of a wedge on a wedge, not conical, but a wedge on a wedge. And a French Spaniel's head is more rectangular, and the muzzle's boxier, and the stop is more pronounced, and they have floppier ears. Small Munsterlander, the head is not necessarily a full wedge on a wedge with the cheek fill. There tends to be less cheek fill.
Hmm.
There tends to be more divergent planes on the skull. Not Spinoni like divergent, but the small Munsterlander's muzzle has a tendency to tip down. Also, the Drent's muzzle is going to be more blunted and should not have lip, where the French Spaniel is going to have mud flaps for lips.
Right.
I don't know how tight your lip is supposed to be in the small Munsterlander.
They're looking for a tighter lip, and when our breed council evaluated my female that'll be bred next month, they took a long time looking at her lips, and 2 out of the 3 liked them, one didn't like them. So, and that is what it is.
Right, right. A Drent's supposed to have a tight lip, although having a looser lip is not terribly uncommon. It's just as long as they're not, houndy mud flaps on some of the males, that can be a little more wiggle roomed. But because fundamentally the body of the Drent is really not anything super special. It's just like, and I christened the dog. So it's just a moderate dog. It's going to be like a 10 to 9. It's going to be a little bit longer than it is going to be high. The front and rear angulation should be moderate and balanced. Tail set should be just kind of straight off the back. You're not going to get a 12 o'clock tail out of a Drent. In fact, once you have an adult Drent, if you get a tail that goes much over 3 o'clock, you're already into a faulty situation with the tail. So the tails kind of come off and they go down. And if you're one of these people that just feels obligated to hold a dog tail up in a show ring or whatever, then the Drent is not for you. but the body is kind of just a generic dog ish, and then but they're going to have heavier bone than both the small Munsterlander or the Epinol. I believe they're going to be a little more well muscled than both of the parent. They're the standard says dryly muscled, uh, but you have to apparently ingest some magical mushrooms to understand what that really means, and it actually but it actually refers to a dog that is not going to look like an American pit bull, not that kind of, Belgian blue muscle, but you're going to have a dog that is fairly well muscled. So you're going to have a dog that has heavier bone than those other two breeds, and they're going to be. I like to say they're either a small, large breed or a large, medium breed. They're, so the girls are in the upper mid 60 pound, and then the boys add about 10 pounds to them. So you get that. But really, the fine line detail on a Drent is the head. They are a head breed. If you read the standard, uh, the description of the head is more than a third of the standard. That's what delineates it mostly from the Epinol Francois, the French, and the small Munsterlander, and then to a lesser extent, the German Longhair, which relative to a Drent will be much, it'll have a lot more tuck up. And its underline will be a little bit racier, and they're a little bit lighter bone. I mean, they're gorgeous freaking dogs, don't get me wrong, but relative to a Drent, they're going to be a little bit racier and look a little lighter, and this there's going to be a little more boxiness to the skull, but that's those are the primary drivers, and then the Drent is not allowed to be roan,
Okay. So
right? So
they're all going to be white and spotted some in some capacity.
what right, white with plates. So what you
Okay.
can have, so in the Drent, you have white with plates. Ideally, your dog should be 51% white. The cleaner the white, ideally, is better, but you can have spots within the white. So the little spots are called spickles, and spickles can be really small, or they can be, about the size of a dime almost. And generally speaking, the spickles go up the legs. They can be around the muzzle. A few years ago, that spickling got really popular, so you'll get it in the coats. That's allowed because the white hair is white and the brown hair is brown. So roaning is when the hair is mixed, so the white and the brown hair grow together, like on my little clear coat wire hair. That's a roan coat. And then what you'll get with Drents, they call it skimmel, which translates to fungus, which is a patch of roaning. So a small patch of skimmel or roaning is not a crisis. Like my coaster here that my water's on. If you had a patch of skimmel the size of a coaster, it's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. You can show your dog, you're going to get a champion title on whatever. It's just not going to be as desirable as a dog that doesn't have it, if that makes sense. But
Sure.
so coat wise, it's pretty simple. The coat is not also the coat is not flat like the other breeds. So the Drent will have more texture. Um, Not like a perm, not a full curl, but like if you were to come here and pet Powder or Isla or Tula, you'll see they have all kinds of just little texture. And then the ideal Drent tail, I'd have to send you a picture of Isla. She was blessed with the perfect Drent tail, and it's this crazy arrangement of twisting, wrapping hair that kind of makes the tail look like a brushy corn cob.
Hmm.
Because the hair, it's not a flagtail that hangs down, although there are a lot of Drents with flagtails. But ideally, this wrapping hair is all the way around the tail. So it wraps up nearly as much as it wraps down. So the basic shape is that of a corn cob. And when they get wet and start to dry off, and you have a Drent with a perfect tail, it's an interesting thing to see. But that is the holy grail of Drent tails.
When I think of the Drent or look at pictures of the Drents, They remind me of the standard cartoon dog that you've seen in in a million different cartoons of it. It's probably was named Spot or something like that, and it was a white dog with some plating or spotting in the cartoon, right?
Right. Yeah, no, and then they call them plates in the Netherlands, and obviously they can be in all different kinds of arrangements. It is very interesting. We've bred enough dogs, and we know the ancestry of our dogs, and there basically no two Drents have the exact same markings. However, you will see certain arrangements skip a generation or two and come back out. For example, we have in our line an Orion's belt of markings. So you'll have like a large plate, and then above it, there'll be three small plates. They'll be the size of I don't know, silver dollar, or give or take silver dollar and a quarter, and they'll be at an angle, three of them like Orion's belt.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
really
and
cool.
then where you'll get, sometimes it's lower on the back, sometimes it's higher on the back. If you get an exact uh, plate transfer, it's almost always a mirror image.
No kidding.
So it's we're my wife and I are like ultra nerds with this stuff. So we nerd out on this only way that total freaking nerds can nerd out. So yeah, we're we're ridiculous, but we're totally crazy about what we do, and trying to make a difference with these dogs. So
Well, if you're breeding constellations into your dog coats and colors, I think that's pretty cool. Just call me when you get Sagittarius done, and then if you get more than one constellation, then I think that can be success, right?
yeah, if we could do that, then I would be really doing something amazing. But I'm not even clever enough to operate the audio track thing that you have for this. So the
Well,
odds of me getting there is probably low.
yeah. To be fair, I'm not sure if I'm clever enough to do it either. We'll find out when I'm editing this later.
Right,
So,
right.
you and I
Um,
talked a little bit before about the history of the Drents, and it seemed like
yes.
you had I'd say, an okay handle on it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Right, sure. So, the Drent is kind of a neat dog, and in that, again, the close relatives, all brought up by the Spanish army back in the day. This is almost 400 years ago now, and they dropped off these white and brown dogs in France and parts of Western Germany and into the Netherlands. They had occupation there. And so these dogs were left behind, and quite unlike the way like German Wirehair has come around. The German Wirehair is like the ultimate designer dog, right? People want to get pissed off about doodling, but the German Wirehair is just that. There's a designer dog. It was, Heinz and Heinrich decided that they needed this capability, and they were going to breed to that capability, just the way that a bartender is going to make you a sex on the beach or whatever fancy cocktail, two parts this, one part that, ding dong ding, and then there's your drink. Well, that's not how a Drent was built, and that's not how the French Spaniel was built, and that's not how that was. So, but what makes the Drent kind of unique is you had the province of Drenthe, where the common man had the right to hunt. So, where even in Germany and other things, you had to be super rich, or you had to be aristocracy or whatever. In the province of Drenthe, if you could afford your little hunting license, and it was just a couple of guilders, so you could be a very, very, very humble person and afford to be able to go hunting. So they used the dogs that were there, and that were these Drents. And over the time, they just kind of were like, and they were very poor. We've talked about Vincent van Gogh and those dark brooding skies. They were so poor. I mean, like, they reputed for boiling tulip bulbs to subsist on.
Hmm.
That kind of poor. Like, you're going to eat stuff that typically most people would find to be inedible. So when we talk about that the Drent comes from humble origins, it is very true. And odds are you were a farmer. And the interesting thing about a Dutch farm is their farmhouses are called hovas, and it's basically a square. And in one corner will be the gate, and it basically the building fences itself in. So you have the cattle or your horse or whatever you're going to have, chickens in one thing, and then your hay in another, and then the family lives in the other piece. And then they can close it up at night to keep the Germans away because they sneak over and steal your stuff. Those were part of what happened back in the day. So you had this one dog but you couldn't afford much. So if you were going to go hunt fox or geese or swans or the gray partridge, which is what the breed takes its name from, but it also, my problem with that is that it suggests that it's a one-trick pony. But the Drent was used to hunt rabbit, fox, swan, ducks, pheasant, whatever you're going to go hunt. That's what you're going to go hunt.
Are the Drents going to go and retrieve a swan for you?
Well, I don't have any photos of that. However, I do have some friends in Norway and Sweden, and they actually have several Drents that have gone through all the blood tracking requirements and are on the national rosters for those country for blood tracking. So you as a hunter, if you go and shoot a boar or a moose or whatever and lose it, you go to this national directory and you call one of these ladies and they bring out their Drent that does the blood tracking. Long story short, I have photos of a Drent being sent into a pond to retrieve a deer that went in to die and then pull the deer to water where it could no longer, obviously the deer was too heavy for it to like carry out, but drug it
Sure.
all the way to the bank.
Well, I'm giving that retrieve credit to the Drent then, without a doubt. If you pull it off on a deer, then I'm giving that one to you.
Right. So I'm going to guess if the swan is croaked off, the Drent will give it a whack, you
Right
know.
on.
So, um, but so the Drent did pull duty as taking care of vermin in the barn to an extent, but that was more left to the Frisian Stabbyhoon from Friesland. But Drent is slightly south. So, but they aren't much of a ratter. They're really good with other animals. We had clients that had pet chinchillas and iguanas, and they learned how to introduce puppy to them, and they've been able to they're not, they don't have the sharpness that a wire hair has. But I would imagine though, if you had an adult one and you introduced it to a chinchilla, I don't know that a Drent would just like go at it. A Drent would probably try to play with it, but it would just end up unfortunate for the small animal because they're swatters, and they would be like, "Oh, my friend died," and then they're all act sad. So, but you have this dog that you needed to, that was your hunting dog, and it was going to hunt everything you could. And then also, we have some really, really old photos where Drents were rigged up to the cart. And when you were going to cart your vegetables or cheese or whatever you had going to market, your Drent, that's probably one of the reasons why the Drent is a little stouter than some of the other breeds, because they were actually used in carting. Maybe not extensively, but it was part of the repertoire.
You know, I tried that with my poodle pointer. I have an adopted poodle pointer in addition to the small Munsterlander. And my poodle pointer's in here. His name's Moose. He's my buddy. But I was clean. I used to live in the suburbs before I moved out to where I am now. I lived in the suburbs in Maryland, and we had to rake our yards and bag all the leaves up and take them to the some magic people would come by overnight and your leaves would be gone the next day. But I had my poodle pointer Moose dragging my jet sled with 2 leaf bags in it every time, down the driveway to the edge of the driveway. He didn't like it too much, but we didn't work on it all that much either. But he was not a big fan of doing that. So maybe I should have had a Drent for that job.
Right. So in that regard, they're pretty just, and because they were basically a land race for the better part of 350, almost 400 years before they were formally recognized, they are there in towards the end of World War II. Basically, it was just Yoop had one and Yop had one, and they're like, mine is good. And so those are the ones that's how land races work, right? Oh, I know a guy that's got one and it's really good. So they just kind of bred the good ones to the good ones. And so that's part of it. And then one of the things I think, so the breed has what's called the 3 pillars of the breed, which I think is kind of neat. So they say the hunting dog par excellence. That's how it roughly translates. And then the center one, the center pillar, doesn't translate well to the American mind. Property dog. And, so no, they are not going. They're going to bark when somebody comes to the door. They're going to bark when, if you have your yard done and the yard guy's new and they haven't been introduced, they're going to bark at him. They aren't going to. If somebody comes into your house, they're going to be like, the little Juan burritos are over here, and you heat it up for a minute and a half, and it's perfect for me. They're not. They are they don't have a mean bone in their body, and if you find somebody that has a Drent that has aggression, then there's something wrong with that dog.
Sure.
Aggression is not part of the breed. But they are going to bark. They're going to do an alert bark if there's something weird or off. And then the third pillar is be an excellent playmate to the children and family. So, and I don't know of any other versatile pointing breed that those are the three long poles in the tent. So I think that kind of describes some of the personality that you get. So you're dealing with a dog that's been bred to be intelligent, and that's what makes them amazing creatures to have around. But it can also be, if you're not smarter than your Drent, you are going to have an interesting time with your dog.
Sure.
So because sometimes they like pulling their own little pranks. Booker, my second Drent, Paxton was a perennial good boy. Jenna's old man Fowler, he was also a perennial good boy. Never had, if they had those obtrusive thoughts, they never acted on them. Then there was my Booker. If he had an obtrusive thought, that dude, I mean, he learned how to work a lazy Susan in the corner of the kitchen. He learned how to move a trash can from one end of the kitchen to the other end of the kitchen so that he could get to the shelving above. He learned how to work the foot pedal on trash cans, so you had to put latches on them. So, yes, he didn't always use his powers for good.
Yeah, well, for his good, right? Certainly.
Yeah, for his good, for show.
I laugh only because it's your dog that was doing that and not mine.
Yeah, in the Dutch have a slang word for it. It's called ungelund, which is slang for naughty. And ungelund is part of the breed, and it's one of those things. I don't think if you tried to wash it out, you're just going to create some other issue. Other people have tried to do things in different breeds, and even in the Drent, they decided many years ago that the barking was a problem, so they tried to breed it out. And then they learned that the dogs didn't point, and they're like, "Oh, let them bark." And then all of a sudden they're pointing again. So you're like, so it's like a game of pickup sticks. When you pull one out, you don't necessarily understand how it's relating to all the others on the table. So you have to be careful when you fool around with that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. It's sometimes just the physical proximity in that, in that chain of genes can have effects, even though it's not that one specific, gene that exhibited that trait, but just because it was close to that gene, you may have just thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. Some strange stuff can happen. But the other thing is, okay, so yes, we have, so we have a Spinoni. Our friend and mentor Laura Reeves did an amazing the sales pitch of the century, and so we have Physopotamus, the Spinoni, the Spinini Dream, and she's a cool dog, and she's an amazing hunting dog, and I can see why a lot of people might not appreciate a Spinini in the carpet. She's an orange and white roan. Basically, a Spinoni on point can look fairly classic, or it looks like somebody cut a big giant piece of shag carpet out of the Magic Mystery Machine and just threw it in the field. So there's that. Uh, but there is a similarity to the way the Drent hunts, and then you have the wire hair, which basically speeds off like it's got a bottle rocket in its backside, and then will slam on point where its front feet act like it just hit glue paper, and the back feet, and it's and that's cool, right? Okay, but the Drent, and when I was listening to our French Spaniel friend, I'm like, man, he's describing the Drent on point, and I freaking love it. It's so freaking cool. It's like hunting behind a panther. They get birdie, they start crouching down, I mean, it's freaking cool, man. It activates the alligator brain. I mean, it's the part of your brain that lets you get excited about watching a campfire all night long. You ain't no human being ever gotten bored watching a campfire unless there's something wrong with you, right?
No, I just
That
spent 2 nights doing it with a bunch of boys out, out in Hoosier National Forest.
Right, it's totally addictive, right? So a Drent working in, yeah, no, are they just gonna like run in like their tails on fire and then slam onto point with their tail straight up? No. What they're going to do once they catch scent, you're going to see that body language change. You're going to see them kind of, and if the birds are running, you're going to watch them crouch, and it's going to be like watching that panther go. And it is just like it is intoxicating. I've been hunting over Drents now since 2007 because I didn't get to hunt with Paxson until I moved back to America. So I've been hunting with them over them since 2007. Between all the dogs my wife and I own and co-owns, I've owned 19 Drents. So I've hunted over a few. That's all I'm going to say.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm not just talking about one or two dogs here. And the ones that really have it and know what they're doing, man, it is positively. I mean, if people could get that, they would stop taking fentanyl. We could solve the fentanyl crisis in the country. Just get them out and have them watch a Drent work a bird, and all of a sudden you're like, why would you use that stuff? Just do this. This is freaking cool, man. And I just and then they're really great. They get on to point, and then this is for some other. Well, they're not intense enough. Get out of here. So the Drent loves to work for his boss. So what's very, very, very natural and normal for a Drent is once they're on point and they're confident everything's cool and under control, they're gonna they're gonna if they think you're over to the left, they're gonna like defer. They're gonna look over
Yep.
to the left
They do the look
and make
back.
sure you're there.
Yeah.
And if they're nervous that the birds are gonna move, their head would just stay there, and then you'll watch the eyes go back to where the birds are. If they're convinced that the birds are a safer distance, then their head would just gently swing right back and go back on. They're like, "Where are you at, boss?" And you're coming, and then you can walk right in, do what you need to do, and just like the French Spaniel, I mean, they're an old hunting breed, so a lot of this stuff was done before guns, so that their tail does not go up. If you try to do that to a Drent, you're gonna break it. So a lot of Drents, the tail will just kind of come off the back, and then it just kind of like a sickle-ish, kind of just go off. We a couple times if they end up really close to a bird, uh, and this is a little more uncommon, the tail will go down and wrap to the side,
Mm-hmm.
and then vibrate like a rattlesnake. That's when you're like, oh shit, it's here. And so I need to get my head screwed on straight. Um, but also in the Netherlands, they use them to point the birds and flush the birds,
Okay.
which is awesome. And that's how I now train my dogs. And once you do that, your hit my hit ratios are not that impressive. I'll just say, I do a lot of I use a 28 gauge to prune a lot of vegetation and trees and stuff. But
Sure, yeah.
I try like hell. So although in Arizona this past year I did have 3 days where my hitting was 100%. My shooting's always amazing, but the hitting, but when you have the ability to have your dog on point and you can walk in, and then how footing can be weird, whatever, and you're like, okay, I just need to stop. Then you can release the dog to flush, and all you have to do is have your gaze out to where they're most likely to go, and then you just pick your shots. And so for me, I love that. It's and then the dog goes back to being steady. You Then you can release the dog for the retrieve, and it's just I I love it. So
Now, when a dog like that's flushing its own pointed birds, are you having to train that steady to flush, or are you finding the dogs are pretty naturally steady to flush and you just kind of tune them up here and there?
so it doesn't take a lot of work. Um, so we basically adopted it's a variant of the West Gibbons method, but ultimately I have trained a dog to be steady to flush on that in as little as four birds. It
Hmm.
didn't take a lot of effort. And if you are sloppy in your handling, you can kind of create situations. If you're not sloppy in your handling, then you can then the dog will so we'll just be fine. But really it comes down to the handler taking responsibility. And so that's why when I do my training sessions, I video almost all of them. And then there was a time when I had the audacity to think that it was the dog making the mistake until I started watching my own videos. And then I'm like, this is heartbreaking.
Sure.
I, I'm an idiot. So, I'm forcing errors on the dog. So, I do better now.
Well, at least you're accountable to it.
I I do my best.
Excellent. So you've got the Drents, you've got a Spinoni, you've got a wire hair in there right now. So how many total dogs then? How many are Drents?
So right now we have three Drents, and then we have our one of our co-owned dogs in. She's the one that we bred for the litter. So we have the three Drents, and then we have one Spinoni and the wire hair. So we're down to five right now.
And you're taking on client dogs for training as well?
We do a couple a season.
Hmm.
We don't do a lot of it, but we do a couple every season. We do one-on-one, so we don't just take a dog and then present it back. We do one-on-one training, so that because really the most important part that I've learned, because I've had the luxury of training with Terry Chandler. So if you're a German short hair guy, then you probably know who he is. He's kind of a
Right.
big deal.
Sure. Yep.
I had the opportunity to learn from Dan Hoke, another big time short hair guy, and then I've got to train with Brad Higgins. And but once you actually start watching trainers train dogs, you realize they're not you can't train a dog to point. If it ain't got any point, it ain't gonna point.
Right.
You ain't training nothing. The only thing that you are working on is duration, becoming more comfortable and confident with a knucklehead bungling around. That's what you're training. You're desensitizing the dog to this kind of stuff. But the so the handler, and one of the things that's very powerful, I love to just go out to Dan Hoke's place, I haven't done it lately, but I do love just going out to his place and watching him handle dogs. Man, you can watch the owner out there with the dog, and this thing looks like a freaking bucking bronco. Dan puts a dog on the thing, and just he knows how to touch the dog, put the right amount of pressure, and all of a sudden the dog is like, it's like it's the handler, man. It's not the dog. There's nothing wrong with the dog. Everything's wrong with the handler, and everything's wrong with the relationship that dog has with the handler. So if you're going to train somebody, you need to train them as a team, so that you can get the handler on the same sheet of music with the dog.
Sure. Yep.
In my humble opinion.
No, I think there's a lot of merit to do to that, people say, you hear a lot of trainers say, "Oh, I don't train dogs, I train people," right? I don't train dogs, I train hunters or handlers or whatever.
That's right.
So there's certainly a lot of merit there.
Yes. So that's fun. It's pretty labor intensive, but it's fun. And so we'll pick up two or three people a summer, and we'll work through that. And generally speaking, have a lot of fun with it. And then it's hunting season time.
And are you hunting pretty much exclusively in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, pretty much. So we pretty much make an annual trip into Montana where we hunt blue grouse, and then we'll do the eastern Montana thing and do all the prairie birds, and then usually do Montana's pheasant opener. That can be a real hoot. Um, Hunting in Idaho, that's the one thing. It's kind of hit or miss depending on what we're doing and where we're doing it. Obviously, we're here in Washington State, Eastern Washington, so we hunt here in Eastern Washington. Um, that can be amazing, or it can be anything but. And if you get access to private land, it can be phenomenal no matter what. But Eastern Washington does not have an abundance of good public land, but there is amazing private. And then we usually do some hunting in Oregon, and then we usually spend 5 or 6 weeks in Arizona.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of road shows then.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of away
yeah.
games. That's my hunting season as well. I'm always the visiting team.
Yeah, I think this year, so then we also mix and match dog shows with hunting. So I think this year we might go to Colorado, do a dog show, and then come up through Wyoming, and then hunt up through Wyoming into Montana, meet up with some friends, and then jog to the middle of the state where one of my buddies lives, and hunt blue grouse with Chuck and Dave, and then come home for a spell. And then by then, um, the temperatures here in Eastern Washington should have knocked off a little bit, and then uh, we can probably chase some quail or something around here, and then muck about in there in Oregon for a little bit, and then when the weather gets really cold, we just get out of here.
Right on. That sounds like a pretty good strategy.
It's rough, but I'm willing to keep doing it.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So, of the 17 or so Drents that you think you've hunted over, what are some of the standout dogs that come that, they were just a real pleasure to be around, or that were just a real pleasure to hunt over, or just always had you scratching your head and laughing?
Well, the funny thing is, it comes down to the quality of handler. And so the one of the things I will say, a lot of Drents are in the hand, and I was one of them, in the hands of new to hunting. So there are a number of Drents that are not living up to their full potential, and I was guilty of that with Paxson, and then to a lesser extent with Booker. Um, so what I can say, and based on some of my Drent forums, nobody on the planet hunts their Drents as much as I hunt mine. So they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that." Yeah, no, that's what I do. So this is going to sound pretty like, don't throw your shoulder out, patting your back. Mostly, I've been mostly happy with my dogs because I spend a lot of time working with them, and they are able to hunt with other dogs and other people. They aren't going to go when the birds get up. They're not going to run them into the next zip code. They're not going to do any of that nonsense. So hunting with other people's strengths, it can be fun. Um, but unfortunately, most of them are new to it, so they're working through their own kinks and that kind of stuff. So I can tell you, like Booker's father, I got to see him do some of the Dutch field trial stuff in the Netherlands. It's phenomenal. He was a hunt prize winner, as was the mother Nadeja. She was phenomenal. But hunting with him, like, that's part of what made Booker an amazing dog, is he had his own ideas, but it's also what made him just like make you frustrated with him. And then as I've become a more effective handler trainer, So the best Drent that I have right now is Isla, my 5-year-old female. She is she's she's crazy sauce good, and we're doing nose work with her as well, and that has actually only made her a better bird dog.
So what kind of nose work are you doing with her?
The AKC nose work trials,
Okay.
right? So they have to locate various scents underwater, under sand, in boxes. They have to do all this crazy stuff. And that has only made her a better bird dog. It's made her more patient and more confident. She goes out, she goes on point. If you were a smoker, you could just sit down and smoke a cigarette. She ain't going anywhere. Those birds are there, and if the birds run off, she will just very slowly track them, and then when they stop, she'll go right back on point. She'll be right there. You don't. It's not a big deal. And then she'll be steady all the way through. Again, that was all done very low stress, low pressure, and then super soft mouth. That's one of the things the breed's pretty well known for, also. And you get a lot of mountable birds back, and yeah, so hunting with her is phenomenal. Before that, I would have said her mother Powder was because I did a ton of hunting with her. She's right. Powder was a young dog when my career was starting to wrap up, and I was starting to get a little more free time. So I was able to put a little more work into her, and I became more aggressive on spending my time off, getting out and hunting and so forth. Before that, it was Booker. Um, Other U.S. Drents that I've got to hunt over, a bit of a mixed bag, but again, that kind of goes back to NAV to NA test. I think more dogs could be 112 prize one dogs if it weren't for the handler.
Oh,
So
sure.
I
100%.
think it's
Yeah.
very unfair that dogs are labeled a 108 dog or a 110 dog or whatever, when really it was the quality of the handler, the quality of training and exposure that puppy got rolling into this has more to do with the quality of the. I mean, it's just the statistical bell curve on how that works out. And in most, some mediocre dogs benefit from having really good experienced handler trainers, and their score typically is reflective of that. And then you end up with a bunch of noobs. And as I said, so if you were to go on NAVDA or NAVDA and look up the test results for Drench, you'd be like, well, that's a little hit or miss. And I'd be like, yeah, I know who won that one, who won that one, who won that one. That's the first time they've ever had a hunting dog, first time ever had a hunting dog. So again, the test scores are not indicative of the quality of the dog. It is more of the inexperience and lack of quality in handling.
Do you find too that maybe the Drents might mature a little bit later than some of the other dogs? So maybe 16 months or younger is not really where you're truly identifying that dog's natural ability.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill. That is an absolutely great point. The Drents are slow to mature. It's part of what makes them amazing and a little bit frustrating at the same time. But it's also part of the reason. So Craig Koshek, my publisher, he wrote an article about drive versus desire, and a Drent is a desire breed, whereas like a wire hair is a drive breed. But a Drent does have drive, and the drive ends up being working for its boss. They love to please their boss. So with that, you can get them to do almost anything, whether it's nose work, search and recovery, tracking, and whatever. We have tons of people that have done all kinds of crazy stuff with their Drents. But yeah, they're slow to mature, and I think that's part of that extra bonding time that you get with them, as opposed to a dog that comes out of the oven and it's done. There, you don't have to let it finish baking. So and then even physically, it's kind of interesting. Drents will be darn near full size by 10, 11 months of age,
Oh, wow.
but a boy won't be done growing, filling out muscular wise, bone wise, the skull. until he's 3 or 4. You'll see coat development, oftentimes throughout a male dog's life, but the bone and the muscle won't be done coming in until they're 3, 4 years old. Most of the time, females are done cooking by the time they're 2-ish. But in the case of like Isla, she was definitely she matured a little. That comes down through the father's line that she just matured slow, even for a female, both emotionally and physically. So that's a great point, but it is absolutely true, and it is definitely a factor with the breed.
Yeah, I know our small Munsterlanders have a reputation for being slower to mature, and for that reason, with my female that I've got right now, I chose to test her in natural ability, and she was almost 15 months old. It can be a little stressful because, I mean, test day, and stuff happens, right? But at the same time, I didn't want to necessarily waste my time, testing her when she's 7 months old, and I've never done a natural ability test before or whatever. But the flip side is, I know plenty of people that have tested their dogs very young, 9 months or younger, and they've come out with 112s. But it's probably an exposure and socialization and experienced handler.
Right. And so like where I'm at, if Isla, unfortunately we bred Isla, I took Isla to the Netherlands to be bred this late winter, early spring, and unfortunately for reasons unknown, it didn't work out.
Mm.
So we would have a puppy on the ground, and I would most assuredly be testing that puppy in an NA before testing season closed out this fall or
Okay.
this late summer. Yeah, well, but here's the thing. So Drents Drents don't do well with high repetition, right? They're not a dog that you can just grind like a lab. You can just like grill them, and you can't do that with a Drent. Number one, they have a reputation for being a little soft and a little stubborn. And in my experience, after working with a bunch of Drents, I I think what you end up with is people interpret stubborn with shut down. The body language is very similar, right? They don't want to look you in the eye. So number one, they get bored with repetition,
Yeah.
but also repetition becomes pressure to do it over and over and over and over. That becomes, unless it's something the dog really likes. So, and even in my book, I talk about if you can make the training a bit of a game, that it goes back to the Drent as a desire dog, where they're just like, if unfortunately I don't have beer, I have a little bit of bubbly water left in here. But a drive dog is if there was a fly in this, they don't care if they're thirsty, they're going to drink it.
Mm-hmm.
The desire dog is going to be like, there's a fly in there, but I'm really not that thirsty right now. So I'm fine. um, so but how do you build that? So you build the desire by making it a game. You make it, you help the dog to understand that it's not pressure, it's actually fun. So you, maybe I'm not going to say everything correctly, but once the dog is convinced that it can do these things and it's fun and it's going to live, and it's then they're like, getting them to stop becomes more difficult. So you can build the desire to the point where they're like, yeah, there's a fly in that. I don't care. You said drink the water, bruh. I'm going for it. And because they're also going to do it because they want to please you. So I don't want to say that I've got it all figured out, because I don't. And then obviously there's nuances with each dog to an extent. So, but I got my training technique down well enough with them where you can do this stuff without it being highly repetitive, and because pressure is determined by the subject, not the
Right.
not the handler, right?
Right.
They can be like this, right? I mean, and it's really funny when people don't want to understand that. Like, you don't get to decide what they like and what they don't like, what is adversive to them. If you can, I love pizza. You can make it adversive to me. I mean, at a certain point, I don't want to eat pizza, right? And I I am not a wine snob. I am a wine nerd. I get off on drinking wine and tasting it out, but I'm sure you could make me want to stop. Um, so it's about keeping it fun and keeping it interesting um, for them, and they perform, and then to use just enough pressure that it's so that it's not 100% positive, so that when you ask them to perform, they know I need to perform. And I can do that. I'm confident with a young dog, and definitely with the dog that we breed, because we're very selective of making sure that the dogs that we're using have some working in them and in their line, and that their temperaments are suited for it, and they at least, if they're Dutch dogs, they have some of their hunting diplomas and that kind of stuff. It's suggestive that the dog is capable of working, that this stuff is not just lost. I mean, I take all those test scores and everything with a little grain of salt, but because they're not all the end all to be all. But the fact is, if a dog has the titles or the certificates, that does prove that there's bidability and intelligence in there, at least in the bell curve. It's not, because if it didn't, it would be at the tail end of the bell curve, right?
Sure. Now, there's demonstrated
Couldn't,
aptitude for sure.
right? So um, that's important to us, and then we also use a lot of third party references when we're looking at a dog. We get serious about a dog. We have friends that go to dog shows or the hunt test and see how that dog is interacting with other dogs and all that kind of stuff, and give us our report card so that we know if we actually want to move forward with it or not.
It's nice to have the third party assessment of, of the dog, because you can talk to me about my dogs and I'm going to tell you how awesome they are all day long. It doesn't mean it's the
Right.
right dog for you, right?
Right. Well, no, I've never met really a dog person that is fully capable of being really super honest with their dog or whatever. But, most everybody wants to talk their dog up to some extent. Some people are actually honest about it, but it's part of the game. So you have to. It's all, you have a little tongue in cheek, a little grain of salt, and you have to start understanding what right looks like to you.
Right. Sure. So what else have I not asked you about the Drents or about your kennel in general? Or, also you got to talk about your book a little bit.
Yeah. So of course there was basically nothing in English written about the breed, right? So um, I needed to put together a little bit of something, and what was on the internet was pretty much garbage. And so now, basically, if you're getting decent information about the Drent, it's all been either produced by me or stolen from me. Um, but every once in a while, you'll see some stuff on the internet, and you'll be like, what in the magic mushrooms were they? You know, how did they get that? That is this. So, but at any rate, so that was why. So it's not a huge book, but it's a nice little book. I think it's about 70 pages, lots of good photos of decent dogs, and talked about all the things that, if you had the opportunity to live in the Netherlands and talk with some of the biggest breeders at the time, Jaap Hoeksama of Van Sudeveld, and Robin Teeny Key of the Gloucester, and Bart Vanderpoel, and others, other notables, Yanni Offerins and so forth, and be able to pick their brain for a minute about what's important, and then to capture that and then put it, because otherwise, you know, how is a client in Missouri going to know about this stuff? They just they're where they're going to hoist something up a flagpole and it's just going to magic. It's not just going to magically attract, right? So you have to put something out there that is meaningful and accurate. So that's one of the big things that I've been attempting to work on, but not making a lot of progress on. But now I have some help with my friends in the ADPA. Is we are working on. There is a judge's education book that's out there. It's been translated. And we're working on getting the formatting all squared away, and then we will work on getting one of the guys is actually a PhD level linguistics expert. So he does like forensic linguistics and all this kind of stuff. The kind of stuff that catches serial killers because they have a peculiarity in the way that they speak. So
Hmm.
Jesse's going to help us fix some of the language so that it can be more Americanized, and then we'll make sure that we work with a couple of other people like Laura Reeves to make sure that we have the proper dog language in this book, so that when it's done, we will have, and it can obviously double for breeders' education, but it's going to be an amazing illustrated guide for for the for the breed. Um, and yeah, so that we're making great progress on that. That's going to be cool. I was intending to put that in my second edition for the book because I got like 70,000 words printed for it, and then add this book to it. But um, that'll come another day. But so yeah, so that was a felt need, so I did it, and that was pretty cool. And that's how I got to meet Craig Koishik a number of years ago because he came down to interview Terry Chandler about his unique training methodology, and that was when I first met Craig. And then Craig reached out to me to consult for his chapter on the Drent in his magnificent book. And then I reached out to Craig and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna publish this book, and I don't want any problems with you, man. So just read my manuscript, and whatever you say I can't have or you believe is double tapping on something, then just take it out. I don't want any problems with you." And then he wrote me back and was like, "No, use this whatever you want. I don't care." He goes, "Who's publishing your book?" And I'm like, "I was just going to do a self-publish." And he said, "I'm your publisher." So he published the book. It sold out, but it is available on Blurb. So you can go on Blurb and look up the Drentsche Patrijshond for the North American fancier. I don't recommend going on Amazon because once in a while one will come out there and then they can be priced reasonably, or they could ask $1,000 for the book.
Wow.
Yeah. What? Uh, so if you go on Amazon, don't spend $1,000. Just go to Blurb and get one for like $70 with shipping or whatever. So that's a
Sure.
way better deal than $1,000. Um, and then yeah, so Jenna and I have been doing a lot of stuff since we've been together, and we're planning to do more cool stuff with Two Gun Kennels. We're in the process of doing a logo evolution. I'm wearing this is a
Okay. Yep.
third generation shirt. It's a little in your face, bold. We're trying to soften it, make it a little more approachable uh, for the younger generation. Because I've been told, I was just chatting with a girl online for about an hour right before the interview, doing all of these kinds of questions with her. And she was like, "But I've been scared to reach out because apparently I'm scary, but maybe
You're a very
weird. I
scary
don't know.
man. Yes.
I don't know that I'm scary. Strange, pain in the butt, but not, but um, yeah, so we're just out, just doing the best we can. We're mentoring other breeders to come in and pick it up because you can't grow a breed or save a breed by not breeding them. You have to make intelligent decisions, in particular with a rare breed, and you have to make more of them. So making less of them is contrary to saving a breed
Yeah. Yep.
or promoting one.
Right. And promoting the breed and maintaining that that structure, conformation, and temperament standard that we rely on as
Yeah.
sportsmen. So,
Yeah, it's
yes.
a huge juggling act to pull off. And so you about ready to have your first litter, or is this
This will be my A litter, yeah. Then and they're
your A
they're
litter?
gonna pop out right in mid to late October, which is when every bird hunter wants to have puppies in the ground, right?
Right,
No,
right.
not at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, that's that. And people get really upset with us because we don't breed, late summer or like, no, that ruins hunting season. They're like, yeah, but, and we're like, sorry, man, we got stuff to do, places to go. We
Yeah.
can't be burdened with these freaking domestic terrorists. Um, but it's an amazing journey becoming a breeder, and there is so much to learn. I'm a big fan of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You can go on YouTube and look all that up, and there's this the spike of idiocy where people have the audacity to they've learned two or three things, so they think they know everything, and then it goes down, and then it goes out. I said the only thing I would be remiss to call myself an expert in anything, but I believe my wife and I have survived the initial spike of idiocy, and the things that you learn as a breeder are unbelievable. Just the litter we have on the ground right now. I mean, if it was my first litter, I would only have two puppies.
Mm,
So I have become a fairly skilled doggy midwife, and I'm pretty good at clearing airways and resuscitating puppies, which is good. So we only lost one, but this litter was born wet. Only one did not have any fluid in his lungs, and then the other one had the normal amount of saving needed, and then the others were were just. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I wouldn't even wish it on somebody I don't really, that the guy that cut me off on the freaking road the other day and then gave me the number one. I'm like, but you cut me
not
off.
even
But
him, huh?
not even him. It's just it's just painful and it's stressful,
Yeah,
and the way that we do business, all of our puppies are sold long before they're born. Most people are waiting months, if not years, to get puppies from us. So that's one of the other things I love it when people are like, well, just fill out an application when the litter is getting close. I'm like, that isn't how it works here. If you want to get on in this bus, you need to fill out your application. You need to get your interview booked, and then you decide you want to commit at that point. We'll move forward. But if you're thinking you're going to jump on the train, kind of, brother, they've been done, gone, sold. They're
sure.
sold, 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 sold. So for us, every puppy that we have already has a pretty amazing home lined out. So losing a puppy is extra painful, because now that means not only did I lose a puppy and that sucks and is painful, but now I'm going to have to call somebody and tell them I don't have a puppy for them. So,
Right.
and those calls are great. Um, Said no one ever.
Yeah.
So it's tough, and but it's a cool adventure, and all the stuff you get to do and the people you get to meet along the way. Um, yeah.
Awesome. So if somebody's interested in learning more about the Drents or they want to, maybe get on the wait list for one, how can they contact you?
Right. Well, they can contact me. We're all over. You just Two Gun Kennels, TWO, Two Gun Kennels. And it's kind of a joke of a name because I started off with two males.
Oh, there you go. So it's
Right. I
a
started
it's
I
a
started off
double
offering stud service.
entendre.
Right. And it's he's not politically correct. So I'm not I don't know if I'm allowed to say that I'm a big fan of Robert E. Howard fantasy, the guy that wrote the Conan novels.
Yep.
And his nickname was the Two Gun Raconteur. And so it's also a play on. So everybody tries to talk about, I'm top shelf wire hairs. I'm, you know, the Mac Daddy, whatever, saying that they're great at what they do. So it's kind of a sneaky way to say, so if you were a two gun bandit back in the day, that you were one of the good ones, that you could wield two guns. That's why Robert E. Howard was called the Two Gun Raconteur. He was able to very good storyteller.
Okay.
Um, so, but the other part of the joke is I had two boys. So so I'm the only kind of idiot that starts a kennel with two boys. Maybe you could be dumber if you're trying to start a kennel with a spayed female. But at any rate,
That'd be tough.
uh, it would be tough. But anything's possible in today's world. You know, just saying. But So yeah, Two Gun Kennels. We're on Google. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. And obviously we got the web page. If you want to learn about Drents, I definitely come to Two Gun Kennels. Go to the blog. I think I've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 80,000 words of worth of articles. and thousands of photographs. If you want to get your fix of Drent puppies because they are sickeningly cute, you can just go to the previous litters page. Every litter has its own page, and each litter has its own photo album. There's anywhere from 400 to 800 photos in there. Um, we're nerds. We do the full puppy culture
Hmm.
protocol with the dogs, ESI, ESN, and the banding and all that stuff. And then for our clients, we burn a webcam 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've had people almost lose their jobs because they're too busy watching the puppies instead of doing their work. We had some pretty high end execs get puppies from us. They actually have an extra monitor or TV brought into their office so they can watch the puppies. We've had some execs, people come in with bad news. They're like, nope, you have to watch the puppy cam before you can talk to me. Get people to settle down.
Wow.
And then we do a Google album for every puppy so that clients can download photos and make their own collage books or whatever they want
Yeah.
from it. And again, but I just did a photo dump the other day, and it was 260 photos just for that 1 week. So we're stay pretty heavily busy, tied into that kind of stuff. But yeah, the blog, I got training articles and hunting articles and all kinds of stuff in there on that. And then I'm always taking like, well, what should I write about next? And if somebody gives me an idea, I'll gin up another article to answer your questions or whatever. But we take that pretty seriously and have a lot of fun with it. And we have tons of information there, and then the American Drent Association's website will go. That will be AmericanDrentAssociation.org. That website will go live probably about the time that you publish this show, but it will be probably next week or early July. Hopefully
Okay.
next week, the website will finally go live. But we've been a legal organization now for several months, but we've been sorting through all the details, trying to dot all the T's and cross all the I's and all that stuff.
Yeah. And organizing that stuff, you got to get it right away. You can't go live with it at the 70% solution with that stuff. People will pick up on it right away.
Right, right. So it's really important, and we're taking lessons learned from what was done or not done in the past, and this is going to be this is going to be. I'm really happy and proud of this breed organization and the energy that's gone into it and the mindset behind it. It's it's how it's how it should be done. My wife and I are members of multiple breed clubs, and so we've seen how they've done it and how they haven't done it, and so we're trying to pull all of our experience in to make this um, something that not just the founders are proud of.
You guys are heavily invested. You've got a great reputation as breeders. I know I just looking through your website. I mean, there was more there than I could possibly read, but I found myself rabbit holing reading your blog and learning about different things, or maybe relearning about different things, or saying, "Oh crap, yeah, I'm supposed to do that." There may have been some of that too. Um,
Yeah.
with involvement in the breed club and changing to improve the breed club. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say that one of your puppy buyers reached out to me months ago when she learned that I was actually going to be going through the 32 NAVDA recognized breeds. There's some grammar Nazis out there that don't like it when I say NAVDA approved breeds because it matters, I guess. So I will go back and say NAVDA recognized breeds. Um, but Ellie Overham said, "Hey, when you get
Yeah.
to the Drent, you've got to reach out to Brian and Jen O'Connor." And I was like, "All right, I definitely will." So and then went and checked you guys out, and I said, "Yeah, these are this is the right kennel, the right ambassador of the breed to have on the podcast." So I want to say thanks to her for recommending you, and then thank
Oh
you
yes.
so much for your time.
Yeah, Ellie's fantastic. Yeah, she's got one of our special dogs. And while Ellie and her husband are not hunters, they're thinking about doing some stuff. But they've gotten into the nose work stuff and are doing just shit. That dog's already up to like detective level nose work, which
Wow.
is the highest level. And so she's just doing amazing work, and that's been inspiring for us even. But
Yeah, well, let's get her in some orange and get a double gun in her hand and get her out on some birds, right?
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, they have come to Arizona to walk with us a couple years, but I'm like, it's it's time to quit pussing about and make it happen. I mean, you can't shoot worse than me for crying out loud.
Oh man. All right, Brian. Thanks again so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking your time.
Oh, my pleasure, and thanks for reaching out and having me, and hopefully you're able to edit this into some semblance of something interesting for people to listen to.
No, it's going to be great. I hope you enjoyed episode number 22 of The Woe Post. If you did, leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Remember to like and follow The Woe Post on Facebook or Instagram at The Woe Post. And if you're so inclined, join our Patreon community at patreon.com/thewopost. If you have a recommendation, question, or you'd like to advertise your bird dog related company, contact me at bill@thewopost.com. Stay steady and God bless.